The Sunny Bot, or whatever it is from the city said that the EAC was doing it or something. I thought, oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Tammy may have gotten
It's
that.
just a walk though.
Yeah, right, just around the rec
It's
center.
not a, physical station where we have to hand out.
No, yeah.
But looking forward to that.
Yeah, it'll be good.
Laura, I think we're live.
We're live. Perfect. Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the April 10th Environmental Advisory Committee meeting. I'm calling it to order, and I'm going to acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. And our first note would be citizens' comments. I don't think we have any this today, so we're going to move on to approval of the previous meeting's minutes. Did everyone get a chance to look those over? Was there any?
Yes.
You had a
I have
correction?
one. It's just a spelling error. Blair Almond has one M in her name, and
Thank you.
that was at the beginning when she did citizen comments, and also
Last time.
later on, I think she's mentioned, but it's just AMON and not AMMON.
Okay, all right. Well, with that, then we should vote on approval of the meeting, of the meeting minutes.
I move that they be accepted as amended.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
All in favor?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, I don't think we really have any presentations. I'm going to, Susan Hill Smith came to help clarify some things about the interpretive sign effort. So I'll give a brief update on that under the old business section. So we'll move to that, and first up would be wildlife. Mary, do you have anything?
Not really. The turtles are here. We're getting strandings of dead turtles several times a week. There's one right now at Station 24 that I should be there, but I'm not. And but the nesting turtles have not arrived. We don't usually get our first nest until the middle of May.
Middle of May,
So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, and I've been out at the north end of Wild Dunes, the Dewey's Inlet end, and we have terns that are fishing. And I don't know if, I've only seen them fishing, but I'm going to keep monitoring that and see if we actually end up with some nesting. They did nest, and they nested kind of in the Ocean Point part of the beach when you come off the beach access path from Ocean Point, and they did that in 2021. So it was a small colony. I think we had 8 pairs, and we had a successful fledge rate. I think we had 6 fledglings. So I'll be.
Was that marked off? up
Yes,
there?
oh, yes, it was, yeah. Diane, Troy, and I were the
Really?
two
Sorry, I didn't
that
know.
monitored that, yeah. But that was 2021, so it was right after COVID.
Oh, but not in 24.
No, 2021, all the way back to
Oh, I
2021.
remember
Yeah, that
I
was,
thought you meant last
no,
year.
that was my first season with the Shorebird program with Diane. So I will keep my eye on that, and I still need to go out to the other area where they were in 2022 and 23, and that was between 48th and 51st on the island. And I haven't been out there to look.
I told the 20 new people on the turtle team to be sure and let us know if a small bird is very upset with them, especially in those two
Yeah.
areas, the Wild Dunes people.
Yeah, they dive bomb.
Yeah.
They'll let you know.
So that they'll know to
Right.
let us know so we can let Mary Catherine know.
Okay, yeah,
Can I
Yeah.
ask a question?
sure.
Related to turtles and signage. I've had a couple people ask me, they said we have really good signs on Isle of Palms, but not in Wild Dunes in terms of the beach access and explaining to people about the turtles and the birds. I haven't seen the Isle of Palms signs, but just curious why we don't have similar signs in Wild Dunes at the beach access.
Just, they're private.
because it's more considered a private beach. We do have some, and what happens is when we do have nesting for the seabirds and/or shorebirds, then that's when DNR will come out and help us with signage, and we will post not just around the nesting area with signage, Cindy, they will put a sign at the access point on the path right before you come onto the beach to let people know that we have shorebird or seabird nesting going on.
I thought she was asking about turtle signs,
And,
turtle signs.
and turtle signs
Primarily
too,
turtle signs.
and turtle
you know,
signs.
the green ones that we have down here.
I
Isn't that
think,
what-
don't we
The
have,
permanent signs she's asking about.
yeah, don't we have some in
I
Walton?
don't, I don't
Cindy,
know.
hey Cindy, it's Todd. This came up last year, and the city paid for the signs, so they were only putting them in the public beach accesses. One of the things we could take up within Wild Dunes is see if the community association would pay for those same signs and just have them posted. Just the city wouldn't pay for them.
I
That's,
think they would, yeah, I think because that came up at one of their board meetings, but maybe we use the same vendor, we get the same pricing, but that is probably worth doing.
okay. I'm sorry, I'm hearing we've got 15 of them for Wild
I
Dunes.
purchased 15 of them, and Dave Kanowski picked them up.
Oh,
Oh, that's wonderful. We have
Right.
15 signs that Dave
Okay.
Kanowski picked up.
Dave retired, and the signs are not up.
But
All
yeah,
right, we can follow up on that.
yeah, find
yeah,
out, Cindy.
Carolyn would know.
Yeah, find out where they are, Cindy, since you're on the board for Wild Dunes. Okay, all right. And I will make a note, one more quick note on our birds. I did spend last Friday morning up on top of Summer House roof, the one that's been completely done as far as all the work, the one that's not under scaffolding. And I spent a little over 2 hours with Mary Catherine from Department of Natural Resources because the least terns had nested there, I think, in 2019, and it was really bad. The rooftop is flat, there's white rocks, and they thought it was, a beach area. So they ended up there. So ever since then, we've been going up before the nesting period really begins, and we put down the plastic netting like you see in construction, to block off construction areas. We put down rolls, we used 5 rolls of plastic red netting and zip tied them, and we had planks, and we have pavers that we put down. So we basically cover the whole roof area where they could potentially decide to try and nest. So I did that last Friday morning with her, so.
Is it a major problem with aerial predators like hawks?
Yes,
They're just
yeah, and the
so
gulls,
obvious up there.
yeah, the gulls, it was really bad. So anyway, that was last Friday's, and it has worked in the past. They won't go, because they can't, the way they nest is they make a little scrape in the sand and then make their nest. They lay their eggs and then sit on them. And with the rocks being totally covered like that, they can't scrape, so they won't go near it, which is good, which
So
is
you're
what we
trying
want.
to discourage them
We're
from
trying to
using the
discourage
rooftop.
them
Yes,
big time, like, no, do not enter.
good.
Okay, so that's my last note on wildlife. Then an update on the interpretive sign effort. So Susan has been working diligently to get communication clarity with the sign companies. We went from Paneer was one company and Vacker. We've shifted gears to Paneer. However, there is now another company that potentially will have exactly what we want, because what has come up is the signs need to be at the right angle and the right height to be ADA compliant. And so we're still in the works. We've narrowed down basically about, 16 panels. 2 would be rail-mounted frames. They would be the larger ones, 36 by 24. We would have 8 18 by 12 rail-mounted frames, and then smaller 36 by 12 rail-mounted frames, and we're looking at 6 of those. So with the range of cost for the signs and then also for the graphics and the writing of the information of what we're going to be talking about. We're looking at maybe a ballpark of still between $15,000 and $20,000. So I hope by next month we'll have an even more, fully fleshed proposal to be able to present with schematics and all of that.
And then
And-
once you have these schematics, then will the development of what's relayed on the signs then
Yes, yeah. And Susan, did you want
be
to
worked on?
make a quick,
Well, yeah, if I may, I'm gonna be gone for a month, so.
Oh, okay.
I'm not gonna
all right,
have
so I'm
any
speaking out of
fun to
turn.
do.
I may I'll pick up the ball for her, obviously.
And I hope that, the writing and the content development, I think Laura and I are working on, and that's not gonna be at a cost.
No, no.
But where we're thinking, we're not quite sure in terms of photos and illustrations to get what we need. If we can maybe partner with somebody like DNR, hopefully, and tap into what they have. And, but we obviously have some local photographers, like Cindy Branscombe, who have a lot of great wildlife pictures that are specific to Isle of Palms that we might try and include. So that's just trying to figure out what is, a fair amount to pay in that case. And also I've talked to Mimi Wood about the potential for her doing illustrations of the salt marsh creatures.
Okay.
For that set of signs.
For the
But
smaller
that's-
signs?
That's a little bit of a question mark
Okay.
right now too. So we're talking to a lot of people, but definitely along the way, we'll be sharing the content with the group.
Yeah.
As it gets more fleshed out.
DNR has a push right now to encourage people to report manatee sightings, especially around marinas. And they have, it might not fit in with your thing, but they would like to put one at the, it's a sign like this about
Okay.
Well, we do
about
have-
manatees.
Actually, one of them would be for sea turtles and manatees, was one of the 24 by 18s that we were going to
Yeah.
work on.
Well, I don't know how that would fit in with your plan, but.
Oh, no,
We
it
could
definitely
Find
would.
out.
It
incorporate
would.
that,
Yeah.
Unless they had a special sign that they really wanted us to use.
I
But we
just
could
don't
try.
think it would be the same thing, it would be a different, I've seen it, maybe I can send it to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, send it to
So
me.
they have
Yeah.
a specific, their own specific
It's a big
sign.
DNR sign about
Okay.
manatees.
I think there's some opportunities too at the, once you're on the actual, what you would call it, the dock by the water. I'm not sure if we talked as a group about having a sign that is attached to the front of the pier, that you could see from that part by the water. Like, the pier extends out and I think we could attach like a fish sign there that you could view from the dock without it being very seamless and not visible from the pier.
Well, maybe there could be your manatee sign plus let them put their sign over by the boat landing or the, the fuel pump or something
Yeah,
like that.
so
Yeah.
there are some no mooring signs there right now,
Mhm.
but I think there's still maybe some opportunities for us to use that space in a
Yeah.
little different way. And to get, I think part of the direction of what we, in our latest plans was to move signs off of the pier and have more signs along the walkway.
Along the walkway,
And then put
correct.
that fish sign down below so that the pier is a little less, not as overwhelmed.
Yeah, we
Signs.
were going to look at attaching it to the front of the main pier and be visible from the floating dock.
So mainly it's, it has been a little bit of a struggle to figure out and communicate with the sign companies to make sure we're meeting the spirit and letter of the ADA law while also providing an experience that enhances without overwhelming.
Right.
Overwhelms the site.
Are you all, so just putting the kind of procurement process
Oh, yeah,
to include this? I
actually,
mean, are we gonna be, I guess I was thinking we were gonna get like designs that would, that any sign company could make? Or are we thinking that how are we envisioning that happening? And I guess just for the benefit of the group, the threshold is 10,000? 10, anything more than 10, we have to get 3 bids for.
Okay.
Anything more than 25, we have to do like a sealed bid process. So there's not,
Yeah,
if we were to want to go a route where we choose a vendor up front, that is a slightly different proposal. I mean, that's a different process whereby you get proposals and then you choose a proposal from a group, but it's all driven by the amount of money that we're,
Okay.
so, that was something I wanted to ask you about, because we are looking for a sign company that is more of a one-stop shop that can help us with the design as well as the creation of the actual panels and also the mounting. And so that eliminates some of the potential vendors if we're trying to find somebody who can do all of those things. But there are, and they're the ones that we've focused on. But like, we've run into trouble with one of them just stop responding to our questions for no apparent, like ghosted us.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I mean, we can certainly, but I do think based on the information that we pieced together, that we are looking at, for the cost for the signs themselves without the artwork that we would provide, at least probably 15. So at that stage.
do you think we could we just do the design? And then develop a design and then take that design and just put it out to bid and see what sign companies come back with.
Even a
costs?
concept, like maybe not like an artistic design, but more of a conceptual, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a great benefit with working with these companies because they have the design expertise and they know exactly what.
And you think they don't carve out that as a separate service? They'll only do it?
Yeah, I'm sure they could quote it separately for us. But, I mean, and I'm kind of asked them to do that, but we kind of then didn't get all the numbers from them, so.
So if we're thinking we're gonna go kind of one vendor to do all of it,
Yeah,
and we think at the end of the day, all of it's gonna be, pushing $20,000.
well, that would include, like, they would ask us to provide them with the artwork. So, like, the photos and the illustrations, so, I think 15,000 for the sign company is probably about where we're gonna wind up.
And these would be UV protected from the sun, so they wouldn't fade, right?
Right.
And these
That would be
companies
specified, yeah.
have definitely, like, they're doing national parks, and so, and they've done definitely, like, ocean environments, salt marsh environments. So they've worked with a lot of different people, they understand the whole, making sure that their weather, and they have some options, and some of their more expensive options are the ones that we would probably be selecting to make sure that they're gonna stand up.
Douglas, do you think we should, Susan and I should meet with you and fill you in on sort of where we are right now to make sure that we're not doing the process wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think purely from a procurement standpoint.
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds like we're going, so if we go down kind of a path that has products of more than 10,000, we'll have to have 3 proposals.
Or 3 bids. or
3
the-
kind of bids. Like, this is what it would take for our company to go, start to, if it's gonna be a start to finish design, construct, and it's getting over 15,000, we generally need 3 bids to do that, or 3 proposals to do that.
And if we wind up in a situation where it looks like there's a possibility that we're seeing maybe only one company that has the ability to do the signs the way that we need them to be for
There's
ADA
a-
compliance, then.
There is a sole source avenue, but we have to justify and document that truly there's only one person that can do it.
Okay.
Okay, all right. And then,
Sorry, Douglas, for some reason I can't see you guys anymore. I just have DK.
What is that? Looks like it got.
we can see you, Cindy.
There's a note, hold on, Cindy.
Guys, maybe.
hold on.
There's something else on your screen.
Something popped
Have
up.
we reached out to places like the South Carolina Aquarium? Because they probably do a lot of signs to see who their vendor is.
I can. I was just talking to someone from the.
We can, Cindy, yeah, we can.
So that might help. And then also maybe we can get some sponsorship.
Yeah, well, that-
1,000, so we don't have to go through.
That we were definitely going to consider approaching the marina. And that would be my question.
Yeah.
If we get sponsorship money to offset the cost and
Yeah, then it
then,
would
because
be-
that's what we had talked about, that we would be approaching the marina and Islander 71 and seeing if they would be willing to put money into the
If
fund.
that's the case,
And-
it does not need to go through a competitive
All right.
process. If it's
So
just a
if we bring the
donation.
costs down with sponsorships, even though that money will have to go in through the city and the city will still have to,
If it's offset by sponsorships,
But if it's under 10,000,
If it's under 10,000
with sponsorships.
with sponsorships?
yeah, that starts to get, because then with the city being a sponsor up to 10,000?
No.
Well,
Or
I
the
guess-
city doesn't pay for anything?
Well, I would say the city probably will have to pay for some of it with ATAX. Right, we talked about using ATAX.
Yeah, kind of a grant.
But if it is more of a combo, does the threshold still?
Let's say 7,000, let's say they, 7,000 from the city, 7,000 from Islander, and I'm just making this up, and 7,000 from the
Probably
marina.
still, at that point, is still a procurement.
For procurement, it would have to be more than one.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
there are situations where people ask for permission, we have the funding, we're gonna go install this, is that okay?
Mhm.
That is, we don't have to go through any kind of procurement
Okay.
process for that, but if this is a city project that we're getting some offsetting funds, that would
All
still
right.
be subject to the procurement requirements.
then over this next month, then I'm going to work on talking with Islander 71 and the marina to let them know the basic gist of what we're looking at and approach them about the possibility of putting in money to help fund it.
And I had mentioned it to Scott at the marina in
Had you?
conversation.
Okay,
Not
all right.
in depth.
Okay. All right, so,
Even the South Carolina Aquarium or maybe Birds of Prey, they might have grant money or funds that they would be willing to chip in because that's, the wildlife in their natural habitat.
right.
I did actually talk to somebody from the aquarium today about that possibility of them even just being a supporter of us through content and images, and she, from what she shared, I think it could really slow down our process if we tried to even attempt to go through their marketing department. She says it takes months to just get a Facebook event scheduled for in-house. So she wasn't encouraging that we could quickly get in there and talk to them and convince them to do something like this.
And I was at Birds of Prey for 20 years, and they're.
They don't have any money. They
They're
don't
scraping
have any
together
money.
to try to cover their expenses. I don't think they're gonna
Yeah.
have grants for other people.
Yeah, I think the businesses are probably gonna be our best bet, and DNR is probably gonna be our best bet and
For-
and
for a
along
lot of
with
the content.
Barrier Island, maybe, hopefully, in terms of helping with content.
Okay. So we need to do a lot more and then circle back and talk with you, Douglas, about where we are during the next, okay. All right. Updating the treatment of the trees on the island.
Yeah, it's,
Matt?
I went out to look at the rec center last week, and the leaves still haven't really fully emerged, and that's really the best indication of vigor and health. So I figured I'd wait maybe another couple weeks until they're fully emerged there. So I'd delay that until maybe early May, I'd say.
Okay.
Start looking at all the trees.
But you already did treat that oak tree
Correct, the
that's
one
directly
around-
in front of the
Yes.
rec center? Okay.
Correct, just that one, though.
Tammy had,
Yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
okay.
But
Perfect.
that's all I have for that, yeah.
Okay. Todd, do you want to, we're on to the litter discussion of lighting ordinance, and I know you worked on some redlining of the presentation from last month, right?
Yeah, Matt and I took another pass. You guys gave us some feedback on a couple of the items, and we sent out we sent back out. It was still a red line in the packet. I know that's hard to read that. It's small, it's kind of messy, but I do have originals, the original language and then the current version in paper, if anybody would like to see a copy, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I would, I didn't have a chance to print it out. Thank you. Thank you.
Trade me copies. That's one of my notes on it. You can get that copy
Do you want,
I've got it
you
on
got it? Anybody
my
else?
I'll
iPad.
take that copy back.
Oh, this one?
Notes on it.
You need that so you can do your presentation.
I did find a couple of typos that Eric actually found one earlier, and I found another one, so we'll get those cleaned up. But, yeah, so we took another pass at this and got it streamlined. We think it's ready to kind of run through the steps, and I think, Douglas, we talked about, you were going to take a look at this. I don't know if you've had time to do that yet. Run it through police department, I think we talked about, and then, just kind of look internally first, and then if there was any concerns, address those, and otherwise look at bringing this to council. But I'll just, if you guys have any questions or any reactions on what we've got together so far, need more time to read it. Did you say it
One
already?
clarification,
Yes.
individual use of light versus no unfiltered light, and maybe it's just me because I don't really know what unfiltered light is. If we could be clear, because I don't know if that's okay, my kids have a filter on their flashlights, if that's okay that they shine that on a turtle, or should they not shine anything on a turtle, or just practically, language
Yeah.
that folks who might take a flashlight to the beach would understand.
So maybe, so the answer is you use a red, like what's the cellophane, so red
Yeah.
plastic over the light, it creates the filter that's necessary. But we can add that maybe in the definitions of what unfiltered light means at the top of that.
You can
Maybe
buy
it's,
red
yeah, if you have a red
flashlights
filter,
too.
that's okay, or I don't know. I just-
Yeah, but I know what you mean. It may not be real clear. And Mary just pointed out, there's also flashlights that are designed to have that filtered red light specifically for that purpose. But we'll put that in the definitions.
And then practically, in terms of putting this in practice, if there are things that are new, like, do people need to remediate, or is this just a best efforts, or, how do we hope that this will be read and put into practice?
So I think the primary thought was that the permitting process would drive a lot of the people adhering to the way this is written now. And then what the other communities we talked to have done is really just waited until there was an egregious case that was reported, and then the city would, respond accordingly. But there wasn't any kind of a proactive go out and patrol the entire island and see, that nothing like that was expected. And I think that's kind of typical, according to Matt, with other ordinances that we've rolled out.
Yeah, that is how our current turtle lighting ordinance is. I mean, it's on the books, it is the same section. And I will say it is enforced either at the time of construction. I mean, that's kind of one avenue as we check a house as it's finalizing. And then the other one is very much reactive. When something pops up, I think we generally, either the turtle team just addresses it directly. I think you all will go knock on doors and just say, hey, there's an ordinance.
Yeah.
Or if it's a persistent problem, the city code enforcement will get involved. Kind of the two primary ways these are enforced. And I
does that
think this would be
happen
the
a
same.
lot?
You have a,
Couple
Couple times a season?
We've gotten code enforcement or officers, was surprised that people would call police and they would go out there and then they would get me involved. And I thought, well, that's great, because I didn't even know that there was a problem. Sometimes my volunteers will report it, but yeah, it's never really, we used to say it's never been enforced, but now it's getting better with code enforcement involved. And
But how many times a season is somebody having to call or go knock on a door?
it varies. Yeah, well, in the past, we have only worried about it seriously when there was a nest out there in front of that rental house that's getting ready to hatch, and we will go out there that evening and make sure that they're not on.
Yeah.
But
Is that
other
a
than
couple
that, we
times a
kind
season?
of leave it and it doesn't get enforced.
So-
And I was surprised at this, floodlights shall be prohibited on front beach houses. I mean, there are lots of pools in my neighborhood that have floodlights on them. And we just always hope that they're gonna be turned off. But I didn't know that you could not put floodlights on your front beach house.
That's
I
only
was-
existing language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was in the old ordinance, and I wasn't even aware of that.
I think,
You-
I have it in my mind that you have an option of turning them off, that they're,
Yeah, well, I
That's
mean,
the
should
dune
this
crosswalks.
be worded that way if they are not allowed to screw floodlights onto their houses? Or are we just trusting them to turn them off?
Douglas, it's the dune crosswalks that you're thinking about. That does have a provision that they either are shielded or they're turned off during the season. But on the floodlights, it's just, it's point blank, they're prohibited.
There shall be
On
prohibited.
beachfront properties.
Yeah,
So they have to be the wall-mounted light fixtures fitted with hoods so that no light illuminates the beach. That's how it's currently in the books.
yeah.
And then in terms of communication, I wonder if we want to put something in the Island 5 or just the general communication that there's an updated version. You know, people should take a look at it, because I think people try to do the right thing, but they don't go looking to read these things. So just to make it front of mind so people look at it again.
Yeah, that kind of segues, we're going to talk about the Good Neighbor, whatever that thing's called, but I think it's coming up on the agenda, but it was designed to communicate things like that.
And I
for
think
visitors.
also through the newsletter as well,
Mhm.
that we all get from Isle of Palms, to include it in that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, we have this big list of things coming in. Douglas has been working with the Community Enrichment, is that the name of the group?
yes.
And there's a lot of stuff in there about communicating some of the good practices and things like that. So we're gonna be overlapping with some of that for sure. So I think there's some good opportunity ahead of us.
What about the bulbs that are gonna be in the new streetlights? Do we know anything about those yet?
We don't, I don't personally. Mary and I were talking about this, is it Dominion Energy?
Dominion's
Dominion.
gonna replace all the old streetlights.
Yeah.
Like they've done on other beaches, so they come in here to do that.
So there is some language in here about what kind of lights go into the streetlights. Is there somebody from the city that would be logical to reach out to Dominion and just say, hey, before you spend a bunch of money and start doing all this work, let's make sure we're doing, what the city expects? I'm not sure who that would be.
Yes, I mean, the city, I have a point of contact that's our liaison with Dominion,
Okay,
that will point us in the right direction.
okay.
Do we know, I mean, is low-pressure sodium the
There's an
thing that we
amber-
want,
there's
or
an
is it?
amber wavelength that is not detrimental to wildlife, and Folly did that. But I remember the previous administrator telling me that those are more expensive, and she didn't know if the city would go for that because of the expense, so that might be an issue.
The street lights are all done by Dominion, so it's not a city expense. It might be that Dominion just
Right.
won't fund it.
I think they would charge more to the city if they put in the
The-
low sodium ones that are not detrimental to wildlife is what I was, that's what I thought.
So is
was
low
meant.
sodium, I guess, and low sodium, low-pressure sodium has been in there for 30 years, I guess.
Yeah, but do
Is
we
that
have
still
that?
I'm thinking that may not even be a thing anymore.
I think that was copied from some other city or something, maybe.
Is there, and I'm guessing, let us reach out to the Dominion representative and see what options are, what other communities are doing. But I guess I would just need to know if there is a specific wavelength or part of the spectrum that's important to turtles.
And it's more amber than
Yeah.
bright, the LED
There's
is
nothing magic
very
about
bright.
low sodium, low-pressure sodium. It's more kind of the brightness and the temperature of the bulb,
Yeah,
the hue of the
And
bulb.
the
Yeah.
wavelengths.
So let's
yeah.
why don't we get you the specifications? That's what you're looking for,
Yeah.
what we want to have in there, okay?
Yep.
And then if there's something that we need to put into the ordinance, we can add that here as well. But that's old language, right? That's the original
Yeah, that's the
language.
original.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
okay.
Anything else on the way it's worded today? Okay,
No?
thank you.
Could I say something about litter before we leave litter?
Well, what are we, so, you know,
Yeah,
the,
so-
next steps with
Next
this
steps.
ordinance?
Yeah.
If you all are comfortable with it, you all would make a recommendation to city council. City council will probably designate a committee, and I guess that would be the Public Facilities Committee would review this and make a recommendation. Do you all think you're at a point of recommending it up to them? Or do you want more work?
Do you want that more feedback from Dominion, Todd, on the street lighting that there might be
Yeah.
installing?
I mean, I think if we could do that, I mean, I think we can do that in a few days. Make the connection at least with Dominion, and I'm guessing they have a pretty quick answer back. And we could just plug in whatever the appropriate
Yeah.
response is.
Yeah,
I think-
I'd be curious to know what their definition of
Right.
low sodium and what their options
Right.
are. I know
Yeah,
there's a
we've-
bright white LED that is very bad for people
Right.
and wildlife.
Yeah.
I think
was
that's I think that's a nuance. I mean, to me, that's
And then
kind of a
there's
technical
lower LED
change that
white.
Yeah,
while the ordinance works its way through the process, there would be an opportunity to pull out
okay.
low sodium and put
Okay,
in
and
whatever.
put in the
Kelvin or wattage.
updated.
So with the unfiltered light definition, there's a couple of typos that we have to clean up. One of them is the letter E should be D in that fourth paragraph. And there's one duplicate that we'll strike. And then the section on the outdoor lighting is, we'll leave it as is until we know more information. So those would be the 4 changes I have.
Sounds
You all
like,
good with it?
it sounds like
Yeah, it's
we
good.
Okay.
could bring it to council and then make small changes as needed.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it clarifies that the enforcement is through the permitting process.
In a way, I mean, I think it does,
That's just more practice, I think.
yeah.
That's just been the practice with all
So
the
it's not
ordinances.
specifically stated, but it's implied.
Well, it does say, it is a policy for both new and existing development so it does reference development. Development is tied to permitting, so I think there's a connection there. But I think it could be enforced either way. I mean, I think if, kind of whatever means, if there's a violation of this,
Right.
it could be enforced by any number of ways. It's in the zoning section of the code, so it could be the zoning administrator, could be the code enforcement officer. And that's not unusual for a lot of the city's codes. It's whoever is kind of on the case at the time. Sometimes it happens, obviously, these happen at night. The code enforcement and Matt are both not here, so it probably would be a police officer. So I don't know that we can answer for certain how each of these would be enforced.
Right, I mean, I don't know that we want to be prescriptive, but yes.
But-
just still.
But that is the practice, that the inspectors would try to catch it and would work to catch it during construction initially. But, that's kind of one day in history. As soon as they leave, I mean, a floodlight could go up or a light could happen at any time in the course of that property's life. A violation could pop up and would be enforced just like other codes. And then I would also just want to talk through, if you guys are good with it, kind of the best strategy for success of the ordinance. I think I would suggest, and maybe Todd, you would be best suited to kind of explain the benefit and
Yeah.
or Laura as the chairperson, somebody come to that facilities meeting, explain the benefits of it, explain the kind of origins of what other communities are doing,
Okay.
and make a little bit of a sales pitch. I feel like that may improve its chances. I can say generally, there is kind of a resistance to adding new regulations, and this group is, I mean, this group has seen it. There's been a lot of, in my mind, a lot of good ideas kind of pushed up to council and just on its kind of face as being a new regulation, there's some resistance to that. So I think being thoughtful about how to sell it would be important.
Okay.
And I think that would come best from a member of this
Yeah, absolutely.
group, just kind of making that pitch to them.
And how material do we think the changes are? I mean, is this a big change, or is this just
I,
incremental?
I would classify it as a pretty big change.
Okay.
Which item?
Well, so now I will say, I see the lighting ordinance as really only impacting the front row of properties and pretty well only applying during turtle season. And really, when you kind of drill it down, it's kind of where there are nests during turtle season. So I would say even though if you read it and the city was extremely kind of forceful in the enforcement, it would be a little bit farther reaching. But in reality, that is how it's handled today. Pretty narrow, and this is a much, it now kind of applies to any property on the island. So the pool of properties it applies to is greater, and it's gone from a focus of just turtles, sea turtles, to all wildlife. So I think it's a much broader, it's a similar ordinance, but it's a much broader net that's being cast with the ordinance. So it will impact a lot more property. So I would expect it would be received that way.
Yeah.
And another alternative might be just to have the amber lights on the street lights that are visible from the beach, if you want to protect the beach from the street lights that are bad. And have low light LEDs other places, but not the bright light LEDs. I think there are 3 different options.
So Mary, you're saying instead of regulating the lights on the houses?
No, I'm just talking
Get-
about the street light issue.
Oh, oh,
Somebody's
oh.
meeting with Dominion.
Dominion.
Oh, yeah, I think the street light, I mean, I think
Yeah,
that's kind of a,
because I thought the amber
Easier.
ones would be very expensive to do on the
Oh,
whole
yeah.
island for the city to pay for, but that would be an option, just not do the whole island with amber lights.
yeah.
That's just a thought.
I'm fine with it, but it sounds like the way you couch it is probably not going to get approved. I mean, it's just, that's my perception, just based on your comments, that if it's a big change and the council's kind of anti-big sweeping changes, then the chances of it getting approved as written are small. I mean, is there a sweeping change you can think of to kind of bring the optics down to like an incremental change instead of a big sweeping overhaul? While still keeping kind
Yeah, I
of
mean, I guess the, not without changing the kind of,
intent.
the intent and what the ordinance, I think, tries to achieve and achieves. I am guessing that other communities,
That's the thing we have working in our favor, is that Kiowa, Polly's, they've all done this. And so we're behind in that regard.
Yeah, we
and
are.
that's a compelling part of the
Yeah.
kind of narrative.
Right.
I'm guessing they also, I don't know how proactive they are about the enforcement of it, or if it's, I'm guessing that it has to be a pretty egregious violation for it to catch attention in those communities. I could be wrong.
That was,
Folly and Kiowa both kind of indicated
same
that.
thing, yeah.
That-
They go
that-
through the permitting process, that's where they try to prevent it, and then if somebody reports a significant
And you go out and
violation.
it's lit up like a
Right.
soccer field. It's like,
Right.
okay, this is too
Right.
It was
much.
more the spirit, it sounded like, than it was
Yeah.
like a.
Right.
Unfortunately, you can't, and we run up against that, and that is the strategy of those that just kind of will want
Yeah.
to want it to not succeed is the extreme case will be presented as, the city could do this, and the city could start walking around with light meters at night.
Right.
I think
That
that's an
case could be
important
made.
Part of the narrative too, to say that people, they can't do the right thing if they don't know what the best practice is, right? So it's guidance, and it is enforceable because that allows you to enforce the egregious cases, but I don't think the intent is to police everyone on lighting.
Yeah, the intent's not enforce, really policing,
Yeah.
like Cindy's saying. It's best practice.
And when was the last time that this or this regulation was updated, was in I see 2024.
I don't-
It was created.
No, it has not been,
No, that was when Todd
20
started
years
working on
ago.
it, I think.
oh, that might be the red line, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, it's got on the clean version 1994.
Oh,
I would
geez.
believe that was the,
Wow.
that
So
was
that can
it.
be part of our compelling argument as well, is that it is outdated. And as we all know, there's been a significant influx of visitors to the island. There's been additional building on the island. So, I mean, things have definitely changed
Mhm.
with growth.
I mean, that's almost, it's 40,
Technology in terms of lighting and
yeah.
and research about what's good or not good for wildlife, a lot of change.
I mean, 40
And
years
people-
ago, this island was not anything like it is now.
Right.
As far as the development and the amount of homes and even, parts of Front Beach. So that's part of the compelling argument as well. I mean, we should be, as a city, willing to move ourselves up into the 21st century with regards to ordinances that were probably appropriate 40 years ago, but are questionable now. And we need to explain why they're questionable. And I think there's ways we can do that.
Yeah, I'll put a storyboard together, and I'd love for this group to kind of give me feedback on that.
That would be great.
Okay.
Do you want to hold off on recommendation for a month, or do you want it to clean up and do that, or do we want to do,
I'd rather get it going
okay,
sooner
Okay.
than later. If it's going to die, let it die. Don't drag it down the road any farther.
okay. So I
So-
think we're ready to,
We need to make a motion,
recommendation.
we need to make a motion to recommend that the updated outdoor lighting regulation ordinance be brought to city council for consideration. Is that the appropriate wording?
yep.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to, what's that, Cindy?
Yeah,
Make a motion, you're looking for a motion, right?
right. Okay, she made a motion. Do we have a second?
I
Yeah.
second.
Thank you.
Okay. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay. We have a section now on water quality. Matt and I spoke with Gwen. What's Gwen's
Hey,
last?
Gwen Wallover of
Gwen
Mount Pleasant
Wall-
Waterworks.
And she looked over the information from the water results, the water results information. And I was going to have Matt, she explained her view of what we should do as next steps. So I was going to let Matt talk more about that.
Sure. Yeah, and I also spoke with, she recommended we speak with John Farrell of the town of Mount Pleasant.
Mhm.
And they both kind of reiterated the same thing, is that we need to do more testing. It's not really enough just to do a rainfall event. You need to have wet and dry conditions, incoming and outgoing tides. And John also said they stopped kind of doing just outfalls because that's the most egregious, the worst variability in bacteria and water quality. You need to do it in open water as well to test with that. So their recommendation was to do at least several other conditions first before we kind of make any big leaps of our water quality. And their thought was if our concern is septic or human waste, it would be to maybe think about microbial source tracking. I think we talked about that last time briefly. Or what they've never done it, I understand, but there's sucralose testing where it's an artificial sweetener that's can't be broken down in the environment organically. So,
And it's only in humans.
correct, yeah.
So if it's found, they know it's only from human waste.
Correct. Anything else, Laura, I'm missing?
No, and the cost, associated for a sucralose test is $500. There are other costs, for the microbial bacteria and to do the DNA testing and to do source tracking that way. And I believe our next steps would be to reapproach this and get some more testing done. And I need to find out, I know that Doug had originally brought the proposal and the city was able to fund the original test. And I think we need to go back to the drawing board and itemize out potentially some different testing than was done in this one. And I would like the nutrients, the nitrates and the phosphorus, because that is an element of fertilizers and weed control. And I can talk a little bit more about that with the information I got from Wild Dunes and their landscaping company. But I think we need to look at maybe narrow down some of the testing and look specifically like for sucralose in waste material. So I'm not sure exactly how Doug, he's an engineer, he's a chemical engineer, and I am not. So I would need some help to maybe recreate a new list for testing and then find out how we would need to probably put together a cost again and then come back and see if the city would be willing to do some additional testing. Is that a good assumption, Douglas?
Well, I guess I would, seems like we did a lot of testing, and I guess from my personal opinion, there were a handful that were bad.
Very bad. Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if we would start to narrow down on those that we think are bad and kind of set aside for a minute those that appear to not be so bad.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And I think I would agree that we come to some kind of strategy to figure out what it is that we're looking for. If it's, and I guess I would think that if we've already had high indicators of fertilizer, I don't know what else that we need to, I don't know what the end game to that is. If we're gonna work to verify that people are using a lot of fertilizer, what's the next step? There's not a rule against that. There's not a.
No. Mm-mm.
So I guess I would wonder where we're gonna go with that information. And if we really even need, if we're gonna go to kind of and I guess we would go to some type of information campaign about the harms of using fertilizer. And I wonder if we really need to hammer down to the exact quantity that's being used to initiate an information campaign, or we just do that.
No, the Gwen's point was that, as Matt mentioned, that this is a good baseline. The last one was done, over 20 years ago? Yeah. So this is a good new baseline, but she really felt that we should do testing when it's not a water event, and also to take into account tidal issues, high tide, low tide. And she said it's a good snapshot, but we should do more on.
Why? I guess why would we do more If that's kind of what you're
because
asking,
it
right?
can definitely change the makeup of the information.
But if,
Would it get
I think,
better though? Or I would think that the rain event would be a worst case.
Yeah, and that's why she felt that we should do something when we should do some testing in a non-rain event, and also to take in low tide versus high tide periods.
I
What
think
was
if
your question, Eric?
I just think, I kind of agree, if the intent is to inform people that, hey, fertilizer on IOP is a problem, and we have that data that says in these areas, it's 20 times what it should be, that's
Right.
probably enough. But if you want to if you want to, like, I don't know if you can do this, like put in a code that says you cannot use this fertilizer, even on your personal property, then I think the threshold that the data would have to like meet is much higher. So I think it depends on what we want to do. I think for an informational campaign, some of those numbers are pretty bad. I think you could probably just leverage that. And then if you wanted to go after like the human waste, then that I think we just have no data on. So that totally, and then that has big ramifications for the septics, and that's a hot
Right.
button issue. And
Right.
so, if you want to go again, put something in the code against septics, then you're going to need much more than we have.
That's
It's just-
what I'm thinking. And I'm leaning more towards that and working to truly verify whether we do or do not have an issue with septic runoff.
And I kind of thought that was
I mean,
I think
yeah,
that was the focus from the beginning of
That
all of
was-
this.
that
And I think
was.
That has there are very actionable things to reducing the number of septic systems. I mean, that ties to grant
Right.
funding and
okay,
so, I think we got a lot of good information, but if at the end of the day, what we're looking to do is pursue grants to extend sewer lines, that's, I think that would be a tailored approach that we're just looking at areas where there's human waste and
for
trying.
E. coli, okay. And the sucralose component, which I think there's no way people can argue about it if there's sucralose found in the waste, because that's only in humans.
Do you know if grant providers agree with that? I mean, I know the people you met do, but it would be a shame to fund a sucralose study, because that data doesn't sell, it's not compelling for human waste at all, but the sucralose sounds super compelling.
It does.
It's irrefutable,
Yeah,
but if you have like a grant holder and like, well, show me you have a problem, and you show them a sucralose test, what if like, well, we don't accept that? We don't, that for whatever reason, I mean, it may be good to validate what the grant providers need to demonstrate that there's actually a human waste problem. And
I don't know the answer to that. I think it's a very good question. I do think that there is a little bit of just kind of ingrained resistance to expanding, to really pushing for sewer expansion based on a study that's 20 years old, where we did go back and do this microbial
bacteria testing.
analysis that ultimately yielded out that 95% of the bacteria was animal waste. And so the case is always put up, if a lot of effort is being looked at in terms of spending money on expanding sewer, it's like, well, if we sewer the entire island, we're only going to improve that by 5% by getting rid of all the human waste. So I think it would be just information for the community to kind of unwind that thinking if it indeed has changed. And I think if we find out it really hasn't changed, then I think we're probably at the status quo that we were 20 years ago, and we can assume it's the opinions about it wouldn't be very different from 20 years ago.
So
That-
the question I would have is what test is less complicated and easier and cheaper? Because it sounds like the microbial test and the sucralose test, they're going to yield either the answer to we have a problem
Yeah,
or don't have a problem.
Exactly.
But for some reason, the way you described it, the sucralose test seemed very cut and dry, seemed very easy. Whereas the microbial test, you have to do that test.
Right.
And then it sounds like on top of that, you have to do a DNA test. And maybe I'm wrong, but it sounded like the microbial route was like 2 or 3 steps, whereas the sucralose test was just one thing, and it also
Well,
sounded cheap.
Mount Pleasant, the cost for them to do the microbial bacteria and DNA testing and source tracking, it was $400 a sample. And that was what Gwen told us. And she said you can get quotes from different labs, and it could be more or less, but that's what they paid. And then she specifically said that the sucralose test was $500 for a sample.
So then the first
And
one's
so,
better.
if nothing else, because the waterway in 36th at near Forest was where we found the very high levels of both phosphorus and then the organic waste and sewage contamination. And we don't know what that organic waste and sewage contamination is. So to
Was
your,
it only one? I felt like there was
well,
2 or 3 that were
one,
pretty bad with
the
organic.
Southwest 13th, which was 25th, was bad. Extremely high nitrate, nitrogen, and that one was actually, that was the one that was specifically noted to be fertilizer or waste, and that was where the risks of algal blooms and eutrophication are elevated. And then the second worst was the waterway in 36 outfall, and that was where it was both phosphorus, organic waste, and sewage contamination. And the nitrogen levels were also well above safe criteria. The third worst was near Harris Teeter, and that was the oil and sediment runoff was really bad. Oil and grease significantly elevated. The suspended, the TSS, which is the suspended elements, was at 44 micrograms per liter, and that exceeds the milligrams per liter, and that exceeds the 30 milligram liter benchmark, which indicated heavy sediment runoff, and it could be perhaps construction or road, but there the nutrients were moderate. And then it kind of went down from there. So those were they all pretty much showed, phosphorus and nitrogen levels that were high. But the two most concerned were the 25th Street and then the waterway in 36th and Forest.
For the organic.
For the organic and for the nitrogen and phosphate.
So does that suggest we'd only have 2 or 3 samples we'd have to do? Sample size?
I'm kind of thinking we could narrow it down
If we pick the worst.
Yeah.
And we drill down on the very worst that we see, and if the very worst comes back at the, either, kind
Right.
of telling us human is,
It's
if human's not
insignificant.
an issue at 36,
Right.
it's probably not gonna be an
Right.
issue anywhere else.
Right, exactly.
And if
If
it is,
human is a problem at 36,
then we
Mhm.
maybe
then I think,
explore further.
then I think we kind of dig
Right.
further.
I was leaning towards, that's what I was leaning towards, was narrowing it down and specifically going back to our original plan, which was to confirm or deny whether or not we really do have human waste issues due to the septic systems.
So
So we
3,
want to do 2, just kind of pick the 2 worst, and I mean, that would even give us a comparison for just the sake of comparison.
So,
We
yeah,
could have
25th, the 20,
36 is still kind of 3-4 times 25th, which we know is
right.
suspect as
would
well.
do
I
both
would-
tests at both sites for $1,800? Is that,
Or even less, right? 1,000?
one was 500, one was
It's
400?
400 a sample, so.
That would be
For
for
the
the
microbial.
microbial, and then 500 for the sucralose.
So if
But you would do one or the other, right?
I
You
would-
do both.
I wouldn't necessarily do both, because because the DNA testing, again, I think if we can determine that, and Gwen was very clear that the sucralose, if it's in the water, it's definitely human waste. There's no way animals, because animals don't consume.
How about,
But didn't the 400 include the DNA?
the $400 a sample for Mount, yes, that was the microbial bacteria and DNA testing.
So
And
wouldn't we do that one because it's cheaper, right?
It's cheaper, and I think it tells us the same thing. So how about this? How about we go back to either John or
Gwen,
Gwen and say we want to dig in on the two worst,
okay,
and we specifically want to dig in on human to figure out if we have septic issues. Which of these tests do you recommend and in what conditions? And then we go from there.
okay,
It doesn't sound, it sounds like that would be,
Credibility of the test, because I'm just looking at the EPA site. They use something called PCR assay to discriminate between human and other animal. I don't know if that's similar to what she's recommending, but I think if we.
What is it, Cindy?
Something that's in compliance with EPA, that it would have a lot of credibility.
What is it again, Cindy?
It's called a PCR assay, ASSAY. And then there's two methods, method 1696 and method 1697. It's on their site, and it said that.
It's on the EPA site?
Between human, fecal sources and other animal sources.
Okay,
And then I'm also wondering if they would do it for us.
EPA?
Because I know that
EPA.
sometimes you can call like a local EPA person if you're worried about something, like I've done this with the property before, and they've come out and done a test.
you think Gwen knows that? Well, why don't we look into that too? Why don't we just plan on drilling down on those two? We'll contact Gwen, John. If there
and
is
the
a,
EPA.
been tough to get federal people on the phone here recently, for whatever reason. We're having issues at the Army Corps with getting warm bodies, but we can certainly try.
Okay. Okay, great.
And hopefully that's, I mean, if it's a lower cost thing like that, we could just
Yeah.
start that.
And I think we could
And report
definitely do it
back.
for less than this. I mean, this was a great start.
Kind of got us started. It sounds
got
like
us-
it
yeah, and
focused us
Now we
on
can
certain
start to narrow
areas.
it down. Okay,
And were we going to get a map of the outfalls?
we have, Matt
Matt-
I've
has.
got a rough one. Yeah, I can resend it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't print it out and bring it, but yeah, it has the 8 different outfalls.
I think, I don't know if it's worth mentioning, but their point, John Gwynn, was that our test we've done probably isn't enough to make any assumption about anything, really. It's just a snapshot of the worst possible time, really, or the most variable. So I don't know if we even know if those are the worst outfalls. Just a thought. I don't know if it's worth doing it one more time in a dry condition.
Do
to get
all
an
of them?
idea. Maybe if it's cheap enough. I don't know, remember how. And not doing all the other tests. Just
Oh,
doing
just doing
E.
these,
coli or whatever it was.
doing the kind of $400 or $500
Yeah.
test on,
Maybe all 8 of them or 9.
let's talk to them about
Okay.
kind of a
Yeah.
suggested strategy and
Yeah.
then we'll go from there. And if it's cheap enough, we can just start it. If they're saying, no, you really should do a kind of broader, if it gets into significant, several thousand, we'll be sure
Right.
to not do that until we come back.
Okay,
Get a sign off on the
Yeah, because you don't want to
strategy.
limit yourself,
Yeah.
sure.
no. But I think we have a good opportunity to narrow somewhat now. This was a really good, she said it was a good first snapshot,
Good.
okay?
Does
Oh.
it make sense to also do an information campaign on fertilizer?
Yes,
And weed killer, just because we're in that season? Like I went to Home Depot and Lowe's and they're these huge.
yeah, huge, yeah.
um,
Yeah, I was gonna get in,
It's a big part of the store in the front is these Roundup exhibits. So perhaps it's good to do an information campaign anyway, just to say, it's bad for pets, bad for people, bad for pollinators, just not a good thing.
yes. Can I real quickly, I did contact Trent Tinder, who is the owner of Green Carolina. They are the landscape contractors for Wild Dunes. And also Jacob Hildebrand, who is the WDCA community manager. And Trent called me back actually this morning. And they use Roundup very sparingly, was how he put it. They do not do any part of the golf courses in Waldoons. So I've got an email, and I haven't heard back. The head of the golf course maintenance is Scott Ferguson, and I emailed him the other day as well. So Trent with Green Carolina, they have Speed Zone, which is an herbicide that they use, and it does not contain glyphosate. So they are using it very sparingly. They have a tracker dye that they use when they apply it so that they know exactly where it's going and how much is being used. He was very open to the idea of working with us on the possibility of doing more perennials and native plants. So I'm starting to feel that the issues that have been brought to us by Blair, and I have to confirm the golf course situation especially because of the harbor course is basically right across from the waterway in 36th area. And that was where we had the very high phosphorus and nitrates. So I'm going to wait to hear back from Scott Ferguson. And I think the next step for us as a committee would be, just like we did with the compost bins, to have a table at the farmers markets and have information specifically about the harmful effects of using any herbicide, and Roundup specifically, which contains glyphosate, because of its harmful reaction with humans, pets, pollinators, pretty much any kind of animal out there. So I was going to mention that as an option to the committee, and I'm willing to help head that up, just like I did with Matt on the compost bins for this summer. Because I really think an education program is what we're going to have to go with.
If the golf course did use Roundup, is there any recourse that the city could, is there anything the city could do?
Not currently.
I mean, if the city's like, no, we don't want the golf course to use Roundup anymore, is there a path to stop that?
Some type of ban.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be the mechanism.
And I did research, and there's more and more communities now that are totally banning the use of Roundup, not just in certain areas, but in the entire, for any kind of pesticide use in the city, in public areas. And we already know that the city doesn't use it, so we're starting to narrow.
I think just like, sounds like the way Trent.
It's very, very narrow use. Yeah.
When would you use it?
Gravel parking lots where they can't use a weed whacker to knock it down.
Right.
Or throw rocks. A lot of the weeding, they do a lot of hand weeding up Front Beach where there's a lot of public, a lot of bare feet, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, just in the parking lot if they did, but we don't even use it there, so it's very, very limited.
What's the product you use instead?
Right now,
Yeah.
if they're using it, it would still be.
No, for other areas.
What are you using?
There is,
Vinegar.
the recreation center is actually trying out it's like a sunflower-based extract that they're gonna try out.
And Trent mentioned,
What's that?
Vinegar?
There is vinegars also.
Yeah.
They can use.
Trent mentioned that he's more than happy to, if there's a product that works even as close to what Roundup does for the weed control, he would be more than happy to incorporate that and totally stop using.
I actually spoke to Bill from Possum Supply, who supplies all the golf courses, all the commercial landscapers in the area, and there's a ton of new products that are out.
Okay,
It's just you have to be careful, because some of them say organic, some will be less toxic. There's new stuff that doesn't have the Roundup component in it. The
Glyphosate, yeah.
So there are new products now, it's just getting those, but
What's his sense that they still sell a ton of
they
Roundup?
they do, but he said there are other towns like Mount Pleasant, they're trying to find alternatives. There's a lot of communities that are calling him to say, what else can we use? So he was almost laughing when I called him, because that's a question that he's getting
Yeah.
a lot.
Well, and Trent said that they do not use the Roundup anywhere near, any of the water areas, any of the retaining ponds, and also any, high foot traffic areas. So I'll wait to hear back from Scott about the golf course situation, because I don't know with that, I don't know.
Well, and I like the idea of, perhaps conveying, the dangers at the farmer's market, but my concern is most everyone here uses a landscaper. So you really have to go through the landscapers as far as what they're using for the weed killer.
We could, to that end, I mean, we have business licenses kind of categorized by type. We could certainly produce like a mailer or, just something that goes to that group that just says, hey, this is a recommendation from the city's Environmental Advisory Committee.
Okay.
Again, it wouldn't have, and I don't know if they're all well aware of the dangers or not. If we think they're not, that would be an effective tool, I would think. But if we think that they are, but it's so effective that they use it anyway, that's obviously that's the type of situation that would require
Yeah.
a ban to
Well,
To
or maybe we
overcome.
could do a monkey survey with them and ask them,
like
what
how
they're
much you're
using.
using or.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like, and I don't know that he would rat anybody out, but if the possums group who say, hey, are you selling like 50-gallon barrels of it all day, every day to every major
Can
contractor?
ask. Yeah, I don't think that would just be a general question. I
Yeah.
don't think it's anybody specific.
I mean, how hard do you think it would be to just put something forward to ban the use of Roundup by contractors on the island? It's just one of those things where, like, yeah, I can see people taking issues with like some of the things in the lighting ordinance because
Yeah.
it's overstepping, but Roundup just feels kind of universally acknowledged as bad. And the community here is a lot of kids, grandkids. I mean, it just feels like that would maybe not get that much pushback. Particularly like with the golf course, it's such a big piece of land. I mean, that influences a lot of residents. I mean, I just find it hard to believe that you'd get a lot of homeowner backlash from something just saying, hey, your landscapers can't use Roundup because, there's just oodles of information on how bad it is.
Yeah,
I'm
that
wondering
seems
if
like
we-
a pretty narrow, I mean, that to me seems like a pretty tailored, it's just the contractors. If you as an owner are insistent that you want to go
Yeah.
get a bucket and do your sidewalk, you can do that.
I think when you tell someone what they can't buy at Home Depot, that's when you're going to get
Yeah.
some pretty, just out of principle, some pretty angry folks. But your contract, if you have a landscaper, they can't use Roundup. A golf course, it can't be Roundup. I just
Are
don't
there-
know how much. I mean, it just feels like that could be an easy one, and I don't even know how much data it would really need. I mean, there's enough data out there that it's bad, and it's. I don't think there'd be much data needed for that. I mean,
Robert, this kind of idea that even the city still uses it, what would we do if we just couldn't use it?
We would just shift to another product.
I mean,
Just go to a completely organic.
and you think it would be close enough?
I mean,
as effective?
You might still have some weeds, but it's not going to be like, going to be taken over by them. Yeah, right.
So it wouldn't be, from our perspective, it wouldn't be a major pivot.
No, and our current landscaper, I don't know what town they the town supplies them the vinegar, and they'll, when they come to the town, like they would come to Public Works, they would just take it from us and specifically use it right here. So it's not like it's a big deal to them.
It's not even a cost, I mean, we're actually providing it to them,
Right.
so there's no
Right.
And you-
additional cost.
You do it on the big lot, right, on Front Beach?
No, we don't do anything in spring in the big lot, would only be the small gravel lot up against the fence line.
I don't even think residents, and they don't care, right? Like, I mean, if we had to switch to not use
Yeah,
Roundup,
no.
they don't care. I guess what I mean is they don't think they care if there's some weeds
Some
there.
weeds in the parking lot.
Yeah, in the parking lot.
I
so
mean,
Because like I
it's,
said, with Roundup, there still is weed, or are weeds.
yeah.
Yeah,
it's
even
just-
with it, yeah.
If we have heavy rains, you have more weeds. I mean, it's just.
I mean, there's like Netflix documentaries on, Roundup and how it's bad. I just think that,
I think you could easily get away with banning Roundup or commercial landscapers, and that's the problem, like you said, what they'll do is they come through and they'll just blanket spray like
Yeah.
pine straw. There's no weeds there, but that's just what they're told to do. And that's where you're getting all your runoff from, bleaching into the soils and all of that, so.
I bet the golf course uses less than you would think.
To be honest with you, I don't even know how much Roundup the golf course would actually use.
Right.
They're more into the herbicides, fungicides.
Yeah, that's the issue.
insecticides. Those are, the high nitrogen.
Yeah.
They're not trying to kill grass, they're trying to
Right.
grow grass.
Right,
So
right,
Roundup is probably very rarely used.
probably.
Um,
Well, then,
That's
you know,
good
And I
plan.
think with, sorry for comfort with individuals, it's just a matter of also educating them. I mean, I think everyone's reading about it, but I'm not sure they are.
Yeah.
Or acting on it. If I had a conversation with my landscaper, and they're just trying to convince you, I was like, oh, what are you using? And he's like, Roundup. And I'm like, oh, you can't use that on my yard. And he's like, well, it's good. You're going to be unhappy. You're going to see, these weeds coming through. And, and I'm like, I don't really care. Let's try something else. So then he's like, okay, we'll try something else. So also encouraging people to have those conversations, to tell their landscapers, like, I don't want you using this in my yard. But I think the landscape companies are trying to keep clients happy, and they're just using the things that they think are most effective.
so what would we, I think, I'm wondering what the next steps would be about the potential to put together we'd need an ordinance
An ordinance.
to
yeah.
ban the use of
Yep, and I think,
Roundup. And I've got a list of communities, and I did not bring it with me today, and I apologize for that, but I could start to make calls and ask, what process they went through and what kind of wording they put in place in order to get it passed. But the list is growing by day as far as the number of communities across the country that are banning Roundup.
So I would suggest that
Is
I
this
think
an
the lighting,
ordinance, or is it a business license?
it would be an ordinance.
If it's just the contractors?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that your license is really just you pay your fee and you get permission to go to work. The kind of rules that you work by are all by the
Okay.
code. So I think you would want a Roundup ban champion in the group that would do the work, very similar to what Todd has done for lighting. I think Eric has nominated himself as the,
I don't know much about Roundup, but I'm happy to help. Do what you
but
guys
I
do.
think
And I can support him.
kind of examples of ordinances and just a kind of draft recommendation of what we might consider. It seems like it would be a very simple, it should be like less than a paragraph,
Yeah.
a ban.
Yeah.
I can
and then
handle
kind
less
of
than a paragraph.
And then
I think it would be good to reach out to other communities that have banned it too. to say,
Yeah, that's what I was
kind
saying.
of part of
why,
the story.
what have you seen
The story, yeah.
Yeah.
And what has been your experience?
Yeah.
It's a good part of the narrative.
And then kind of the narrative, the actual ordinance, and then a strategy to kind of shepherd it through the process of becoming a code. So that, very similar to what we've just talked about with lighting. I think that would be the best path forward.
Okay, all right.
Did
Eric?
Eric just get nominated?
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. You had me at less than a paragraph.
I'm happy to help you do research if you want to delegate.
Yeah, I'll do a little bit and then I'll reach out to y'all as I start understanding kind of the undertaking.
Okay, because I've got,
Yeah, it sounds
I
like
went
you-
ahead, yeah,
You got a lot of.
I
work
got
to
my
do.
fingers,
Anything you
into the
have,
pie
anything you
of it.
already have that you can send me.
Yes.
Like if you have that list, that's great.
yes,
And
yes.
yeah, we'll
Okay,
see what we bring it back to the group next month.
okay. Wonderful, good job. All right, well, I have the update on the engagement of the federal lobbyist, because it was in this is the Island Vibe.
Oh, wow,
So they wrote a whole article about it.
wow.
Yeah. So Thorn Run Partners is the company. Sorry, my allergies are just speaking of. So I'm excited. I'm glad that our work with the water department
Yep.
came to fruition.
Yeah, we still have not, we have an agreement we have a draft of an agreement. We still haven't executed that agreement, but we intend to have it ready to be in effect May 1st.
Perfect.
So, Water and Sewer Commission, we've been having discussions. They're all good to go. We're good to go. It's just a matter of getting the agreement to a point that everybody's happy with it, which shouldn't be too much longer. So it's been approved. It's just signing on the dotted line, which is the point that we're at now. So I think from my perspective, this is, I mean, I don't know there's any reason, this is kind of, I would say this is finished business.
Yes. Yeah,
So I
we
don't know that
can,
there's a
we can,
need.
yeah, we can take that off. Now it's just a matter of you keeping us updated on
What all the good-
what all
all
the
the good
good,
things
all the
that they
good things that they're finding, all the money that they're finding for both the city and the water department is from grants.
Yeah, and they, the state lobbyists are, and it's a very short list of, this list will obviously include, because of the Water and Sewer Commission's involvement, it will include expanding sewer lines, which we knew. We have always looked for money for stormwater infrastructure, has kind of always been a big request, and beach renourishment funding will be another one. So those are the three big asks that we have traditionally made at the state level, and will now make this through the federal level, and they seem very optimistic about getting a good return.
Other coastal communities?
I
trying
can't
to see.
remember their list, but yeah, they had a.
They
lot
have,
of-
well, they have,
Talked to several.
especially, they have really strong ties to Lindsey Graham and the governor's office. And, here it is. They represent more than 270 clients in 11 states, including Florida, Montana, California, Texas, and Oregon. And they already act here in South Carolina for 9 entities, including the city of Greenville, the upstate, Richland County, the Midlands, College of Charleston, Roper Hospital, and downtown Charleston. So they seem very, broad, but then also have a really good local,
Yeah.
South Carolina
Yeah,
presence.
they were a little more kind of locally connected than the other group that
That we-
everybody really liked. So we feel very positive, and they have a pretty close relationship with our state,
Yeah.
our existing state lobbying firm. So we hope that will, that they'll kind of play off each other if one can get funding at the state level, that they can work together well with that. So we're
Great.
excited. Hope they do good work. We're sure they will.
Okay. And then, do you want to do any update on the sand placement?
Yes,
outreach?
I would just say, and out there today, and we had 5 different operators working on our beaches, all just
I
today.
could hear them.
So there's a
Very
ton
exciting.
just a ton of work
Great.
going on. You have the Army Corps of Engineers working on dredging the material from the back of the island to the area in front of Ocean Boulevard. You then have, we have a contractor who is moving all of the sandbags placed in that area down to the Beechwood East area, because they've been pumping now for a month or two, so they have adequate sand that is giving still so we got the sandbag moving guy, he's out there. You have the sand pumping guys, they're out there. Then you have a third group at Breach Inlet who is taking the sand that is being pumped, and they're building a protective dune on the ocean side of that existing dune. So there's a lot going on there. And then just yesterday, the Wild Dunes Shoal Management Project began. That's the fourth contractor working. They are mechanically moving a sandbar, basically, that's just off the shore, moving that sandbar onto the shore. And unfortunately, that area is just continuing to get hammered by erosion right at Beechwood East.
Beechwood East, yeah.
It's just been so devastating for them. I mean, really in the last month, the tides have gotten well up under their homes, collapsing slabs, and it's very, very bad in that area. So wish it could have just held on for, 30 more days, but unfortunately, it got into those homes pretty.
So they're
Pretty
putting
significantly.
sandbags there and they're gonna pump, but they can't cover the sandbags.
That's correct.
With pumped-in sand from the shoals.
That's-
So how are they doing that?
Well, they're scraping it, aren't they? They're not going to pump it, are they?
Yeah, that's correct.
Well,
They're
however-
scraping sand and they're placing it just seaward of the bags. So the bags are remaining in a
But
line.
they're still exposed, so they can be removed.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're putting it
Thought
on
that was part of
on the ocean side,
permanent, yeah.
and then those bags will come out
Okay.
as soon as, and ultimately the hope and the expectation is that big sandbar comes onto the shore and becomes part of the shore, and that should have a big protective beach at that point. But it's just this process of connecting
I
that
mean,
causes so
just
much.
that one section has connected, but there's still.
That's correct.
But there's
Yeah,
still
they're-
way more out there that hasn't.
They're kind of
that-
driving out the
Yeah.
little connecting piece now
Yeah.
and using that as a bridge.
I could see it clearly when I was up on the roof at.
Oh, yeah.
At Summer
Yeah,
House
good
last
deal.
Friday. I was
Yeah.
like, wow, that's.
There's a lot of sand out there. I mean, that's the good news.
Yeah.
But it's just, it really is beating up those
Yeah.
houses in the short term. So a ton going on.
What happens to the sandbags? Are those stored somewhere so they could be used?
No, they really,
Emergency, or do we sell them, or? what
no,
happens to them?
they're kind of a single-use type thing. We are able to move, and we are moving ones from Breach Inlet to Beechwood East. So that's been a good, but once they're done at Beechwood East, we're only able to salvage maybe a third of them, and we will not be able to salvage any at Beechwood East. I mean, every high tide, they're just getting beat around, and they're very tatty when they're done there. So they'll go away.
So you just empty the bags of the sand and then.
Yep,
throw the bags-
cut them, empty the
Yeah.
sand, they go in a dumpster and go away.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then let's move to new business and discussion of the Kiowa Good Neighbor Policy. Is that Todd? Are you-
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's 5:30, so maybe in the interest of time, can I make a motion to push that to next month? Is that okay with everybody, or you want to talk about?
I will just say the next three items I haven't, and they won't take more than 5 minutes. The three combined.
5:30 now.
So if we're good, finishing now, or you could have a few minutes, you want to just
I'll
push
spend a
that?
couple minutes on it, and then we'll table it.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay.
So in the packet that you got, I think it's page 20 or 21, there's a two-page example. We had it from the last meeting too, but a two-page example of what Kiowa has as their good neighbor policy. And Matt and I were talking about this idea of having something, what does good look like, a communication? Primarily, initially, we were thinking about the short-term rental properties and visitors, but it really could be kind of weaved into a broader communication campaign, like for people that have been here for a long time, or people that have moved here recently, people that are day trippers, whatever it might be. Like these are the things we want to make sure that everybody knows are important, to the health of the community, the people, the island itself, and that kind of thing. So it was just an example. I did see in the community enrichment group had something like this. And in fact, I think there was a program like a recognition, Matt and I talked about that as well, for properties that do good, to somehow give them a gold star or whatever, as somebody that's actually following these practices really well. So it's an idea at this point. I do think the enrichment program committee, the 650 recommendations or whatever it is, when they get funneled out to the groups, somebody's going to own this type of a communication program. So I think our committee would be really kind of a source of content for that, whatever this piece ends up being. So I think we just start thinking about what is it that really matters most? What are the top, 3, 5, 8 things that we care about as an environmental advisory committee? And then maybe that becomes input into this 2-pager or whatever this thing turns out to be.
Okay.
So we'll keep this on the agenda as just kind of
Yeah.
a working point.
Work in progress, yeah.
Okay.
And I would say that segues in pretty nicely into the Community Enhancement Task Force recommendations. That, and I think everybody here is aware of that, and it was, did I put the entire thing in the packet? Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's now on the website, city's website, it's kind of out and about for review. A lot of those initiatives are, and there's a lot of them, there's close to 300 between that plan and the comprehensive plan. A lot of those initiatives are tailored to environmental issues. So we are expecting that the environmental issues from those various plans will come back to this group for study, consideration, and recommendation up to council. So that's kind of future work for this group and really all of the various committees throughout the city. Public safety has got their plate full, planning commission's got their plate full. So a lot of really good work will be working its way through the committee system.
And what is the timeline?
So a lot of those, and that's part of Matt and Todd primarily worked on kind of creating categories, and part of that categorization includes short-term, kind of low-hanging fruit, mid-term, and long-term. A lot of them are very, very kind of long-term goals, and so I would say some could probably be done in the next 6 months, and then some we will probably still be working on in 10 years from now. So broad spectrum of projects.
They had a price ranging too. It was kind of a stab, but low cost, low hanging fruit, short-term stuff versus very expensive long-term things. So there was categorization in both of those kind of X and Y axis. So it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see how it plays out.
So that's
Great
good.
to have there is one that kind of shows that, like what's short term.
Yes.
Low cost, who's accountable.
There is
Yes.
one, isn't there?
Yeah, so that's what has been developed, and we can share that with everybody, and you will,
This is-
yeah, yeah.
It's very small.
We'll share that with you, and specifically, we're gonna sort it by committee assignment, and you're gonna get your own assignments, but we can share the whole document so you can see all of it at one time.
Okay. So that's going to be on our.
That'll be forthcoming. Yep,
That'll
that's
be
on your plate.
On our plate, okay. And then you have an update on the glass recycling through Fisher. I saw the
Yeah,
letter.
and I would just say the question has been raised, and I think it's only been raised by one resident, but it's a good question of if and we do periodically, so just to kind of back up a little bit, we have this service, glass recycling, there are bins at 2 locations on the island. We pay Fisher Recycling to take that glass, they repurpose it into various things. They do sell a portion of it, but a lot of it goes into things like countertops and gets reused. The point is periodically made, the county does recycle glass. Why are we spending additional money towards Fisher Recycling? And it does sound like, based on the market at the time, the county recycling will sell that glass to a reseller and a group that would reuse the glass. But as those prices go down, profitability, there's no margins in it. They resort to a practice of crushing the glass and putting it into the road beds of the landfills. And then ultimately, those road beds get churned into the rest of the landfill. So ultimately, that material is going into the landfill. Is kind of historically how the city has seen that, and they felt like it's a good use of money to do an alternative and use Fisher Recycling. And Matt has been kind of the point person of trying to figure out where we are in the market. What are they doing today? Is it being used in road beds? Is it not? And I don't know if we can really, say for certainty what's done kind of month to month. And it might be so kind of back and forth that it's hard to know exactly what they're doing at any particular time.
Yeah, well, she said that was really a pandemic thing. They leaned heavily on the roadbed stuff. So they are now fully recycling glass and sending it to Strategic Materials in Georgia, the company that does all kinds of stuff. But it is very volatile, she said. It can be, but right now it's stable and there's no concern about it going back to roadbed anytime soon.
That is what the county is saying?
Correct, yeah.
And it sounds like that's at odds with what.
Kind of opposite what she said here.
What Fisher is saying?
And they have like almost no contamination. I'm looking at her email and she said there's extremely contaminated, not good quality recycling. Christine at the county said that's not accurate. They rarely ever have that issue, so.
So, there was a lot of effort put into kind of changing behavior in the community, using the green barrels, taking your glass to these bins. I think it's been successful. I mean, they're very full.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
take mine there.
Yep, we do too.
And so I guess there's the question of a little bit, we
How
can
much
continue.
how much are we
It's
paying?
not it's
No, it's very
10,000 a
small,
year.
yeah.
10 a year, yeah.
Yeah, 10,000 a year.
I didn't even know these existed.
The green glass recycling,
Never.
yours are going in the
where are
blue
they?
barrel. Yours
Yeah.
are going in your blue can.
Yeah, most people.
I would say, I would be shocked if I picked 10 people off the street, residents here,
That knew it?
that 20% knew about it. Where are they?
They're
Harris Teeter.
by Harris Teeter. They're
Yeah,
where our
that's right.
composting,
Carmen
they're,
Dutch Park,
the
Yeah,
park.
like the,
And
yeah,
then-
yeah.
and by
There's
the-
like a paper one and there's a glass bin
and
right
there's
by
one
the
at the
teeter.
marina.
And the one at the marina.
It's
I've
to
not
the right,
s-
it's next to the park, or did it go?
Just as
it's
you
Yeah,
next to the
go,
park.
just
yeah,
as you enter
yeah.
the marina, it's on the right.
You've got the Harris
Oh.
Teeter to the right of that, there's the Carmen R. Bunch Park, and it's kind of
Yep.
where you would pull
By the
in there.
bed.
I can, in my mind's eye, I think I can picture it, but wouldn't have known,
So,
never thought about it.
So the
I don't
question-
know anything about it either.
two very environmentally minded folks that don't know about it.
I know, I feel horrible.
Well, but I
There's
just
an
assume
article
that
in
you
the
can,
Island Eye.
we have recycling at home. I don't have to.
Well, so I
buy
think
bags
that
of-
is I think that's kind of the question.
You know,
Is we have put some effort into changing behavior, getting people to use the Fisher barrels. Is that a worthwhile effort to continue that, to support that, to try to drive more traffic there? Or has the county kind of pulled themselves out of this pandemic behavior of putting it into the landfills to a point that we are okay pulling the plug on a standalone, the Fisher Recycling operation? So that's kind of the question, and we can talk about that more, and we've kind of been getting bits and pieces of information, we can share it as we get it, but that's the question we'd like to pose to the group, but you will tell us if you think it's worthwhile continuing, or should we, and I guess the fear would be if we go away from it,
There's no going back.
there's kind of no going back.
Yeah,
but-
and
but-
that would be my
And then what if
concern.
things go the other
Right,
way?
the other way.
Exactly,
Exactly.
and if they go the other way,
It's hard to know.
it's hard to know. But I think we should,
So let's keep that on our
Let's-
agenda for
yeah,
next month.
next time.
and,
Okay.
We're running late, so keep that in your, give that some
Yeah.
thought between now and next month.
and then we have some good news about a
What's the?
solid waste grant.
Oh,
That was, we don't necessarily have it, but you wrote a grant
Yeah, it was
for us.
received for
Yeah.
250 new of those kitchen caddies we gave out last year at the farmer's market. So hopefully we hear something soon.
Did you know we have a composting program? I'm guessing not, I'm not.
No.
Not being a smart.
Where have you been, Eric?
Well, look, I mean, I think I'm representative probably of
Yeah.
that's good,
Yeah.
of the majority of
Well-
people on the island, yeah,
You
so.
represent.
Well, not about the composting, because we gave out almost all of the
Yeah,
compost.
yeah.
People were.
150, I think,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, we'll get you one.
I'll take one, yeah. I know my kids come back with all sorts of stuff from those,
They
Farmers
probably have a
farmers
caddy, they
markets.
probably got their cars in there. They got their-
Yeah,
Yeah.
goes in
Yeah.
with their stack of arts and
Hot
crafts and sits
Yeah.
on the table
Holy
for
markers.
a month and
Yeah.
then somehow disappears, so yeah, I'll have to
Okay.
dig into that.
All right, well, with that, we're going to wrap it up. So, and there's no other miscellaneous business, I assume, for today. And our next meeting will be at 4 o'clock on Thursday, May the 9th. There was a typo on
I thought
the,
it was the
8th or
8th.
9th?
It's the
It's
8th.
May
Might be the
8th.
8th is a Thursday.
is the 8th?
Yeah.
Then I'm messing it
Oh,
up.
that's
I'm
all.
sorry. I thought it was the 9th. Okay, May the 8th at 4 o'clock. Same time, same station. And
And I have to apologize in advance because my son is graduating from college at 8 o'clock the next morning. So I have to be in Durham, North Carolina, so I might have to call into that one as well.
Okay.
I'm not sure I can do it in person.
All right.
Do the 5-hour drive and get to his graduation in time, so.
You can also get a pass, and if you need son's graduation, you could get a get out of jail free card
Yeah.
for that too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He's graduating.
All right.
All right, well,
I move the meeting be adjourned.
okay, do we have a second? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you all. Oh, we need to vote, we need to vote.
All in favor?
We need to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.